Welcome to Scary Stories, the channel that tells you scary stories.
The Dogman of Brooklyn-Janice Road, as told to and read by Peter Bernard. This is a story about the Loup-garou, or the Rougarou, or the Dogman. It didn't happen in Louisiana, but it happened pretty close by. As in many sightings of this creature, there is a spiritual or religious element to the event that makes it seem as though what I witnessed was not just an animal, but some sort of entity or presence, possibly of an evil nature. This all went down in Brooklyn, Mississippi, right near the National Forest over there. My family had attended a particular chapel for years, but when I got old enough to drive and vote, I decided I didn't want to go to church anymore. My parents were sad, but they viewed it as my right to do what I wanted with my own life, so we all just tried not to talk about it and not let it affect our relationships and lives. After a while, I started to feel as though I was missing out on something, and I sort of wanted to rejoin my family on Sundays. I was a very proud young man, though, and I was too embarrassed to admit that maybe I had made a mistake. This might not seem like it has anything to do with Dogman, but I think that in a way, it might. So, in the middle of this situation, I was driving home one night and I ran out of gas. It wasn't that I didn't have money for gas. It was that I was so preoccupied with so many different things that I wasn't paying attention to what was right in front of me. I was able to pull the car off the road and roll to a stop. Then I just put my head down on the steering wheel and gave up for a little while. I wondered whether I should walk back to the last gas station, which would be quite a walk, or whether I should call my parents on my cell phone and have them come rescue me. I wasn't sure which would be less embarrassing. Then I looked up and saw where I was. I was parked across from the church I had quit. That seemed fitting somehow. I had run out of gas right by my family's chapel. I was sitting there in a kind of a state of amazement and awe at the nature of the universe and how everything seems to come full circle, whether we want it to or not, when something unbelievable happened. First of all, let me make it clear what I could and could not see from my vantage point right then. I could see this small swamp or pond just in front of me to my right. I could see the road, which is Brooklyn-Janice Road, and I could see the chapel to my left, surrounded by trees. The forest is so thick around there that you can't see past the tree line. Now, I don't mean Janice-Brooklyn Road, that's on the other side to the east. I mean Brooklyn-Janice Road, and the little chapel with the parking lot by that tiny swamp. So, like I said, something impossible happened then. I saw this man come up out of the swamp, walking from my right to my left. It just walked out like there was a staircase in the water and it was walking up from the basement. It was dripping all over, and at first I thought I was looking at the creature from the Black Lagoon. It walked straight upright like the monster did in that old movie, not hunched over like an ape or a caveman. After it got completely out of the water, it shook itself all over in the way a dog does, shaking water all over the place all around it and drying itself off a bit. That's when I could see that it was some kind of a dog-like creature. And my first thought was, Rougarou. It walked out onto the highway and shook itself again. leaving a wet spot on the pavement. I don't think he noticed me. If he did, he decided to ignore me because he never turned in my direction. For my part, I was ducked down, hiding behind my steering wheel and peeking out. When it got into the road, I could see it a bit better, and I could swear it was colored green, more so on its bottom than on its top. The head was the least green, and the feet were the most green. I figured that creature must spend a lot of time in the swamps around here, and that's probably algae making it look green. The thing had ears that stood up on its head, and its face looked like a wolf. Its back legs looked like wolf legs. It must have been around 6 feet tall from its feet to its forehead. It had a tail like a whip tail, which swatted at the air like it was trying to hit bugs. Maybe it was. I'm lucky that I was just a bit too far away to get a good whiff of the thing. Once it entered the road, I felt a terrible fear inside that it was going to the church. I worried that it would do something to that church and that I was going to be forced to witness it. Somehow this desecration was going to be my fault. I realized I did still care about my faith and that I'd given up too soon. I resolved that if I got home that night all right, I would repent and rejoin my family. The Rougarou altered its path slightly, and instead of going toward the church, it went into the woods past the church and out of my view. I waited a while to see if it would come back. When it didn't, I called my dad on my cell, or I tried to. I couldn't get a call to go through, so I texted him, and fortunately that made it to his phone. The cell reception can sometimes get weird out there. It's usually okay, but not always, and I don't know why. Maybe Dogman interferes with Wi-Fi or something. Anyway, when my dad got out there with some gas for me, he had an angry look on his face. Before he could say a word, I broke down and cried, and I told him everything that had just happened. When I was done, he looked at me with compassion and told me that the Lord had shown me an agent of the devil and that it had made me repent. He told me it wasn't my forgetfulness that led to me running out of gas. It was God making me forgetful so that I could learn this lesson. We hugged and then we prayed together right there on that road. We knew there were Rougarou in those woods, yet we prayed anyhow. I guess we prayed because of that. It was very moving and beyond my ability to fully understand. My family moved a couple years ago, so we don't go to that church anymore. We found one closer to where we now live. I still don't go as often as the others. I admit, I find it can be really boring sometimes. But never since that night has my faith ever wavered again. And I have to say that in all honesty, I only learned that lesson because of the Dogman.
Do you have a scary story you want us to read on the show? Just call our voicemail hotline, 804-LIST-SCARY. That's 804-537-2279. And now for something completely scary.
The Dogman that tapped on my window, as told to and read by Peter Bernard. My family had a Dogman problem for months before we realized we did. We thought for the longest time that we were haunted. That might sound a little strange, But if I go back to the start, it will make more sense. We moved in during my junior year at high school, and I moved out when I went to college. The rest of my family still lives there, but I'm hoping to stay on my own and only go back for visits. I think I'm the most creeped out by the Dogman. My parents and sister seem to be able to block it out more. I think their attitude is that there are no stories in the news about Dogman hurting people, so therefore they will be safe as long as they ignore the situation. Maybe it's a sign that they've given up and accept the Dogman, or maybe they realize they just can't win against it. When we all thought we were haunted, however, my parents were very proactive and called in a local Pennsylvania ghost hunting team, whose name I won't mention. We brought the ghost hunters to our living room and explained how sometimes at night when we were watching TV, we would hear a loud rap from one side of the house, then almost immediately a loud rap from the other side, as though the ghosts in the walls were communicating with each other. Then we brought them to my room, where I explained how at night something would come up to my window and tap on it. I never had the nerve to get up and look out because I was too afraid to see whatever it was. I knew it wasn't a tree because there are no trees or bushes on that side of the house. And because of the nature of the land and construction of the building, even though my bedroom is on the first floor, the bottom of my window is around 7 feet off the ground. The land comes up much higher in the front and dips down in the back. The ghost hunters set up video cameras and did EVP sessions, and nothing at all weird happened to them all night long. They caught nothing of interest in the video, and they told us they had no clue as to what we were experiencing, but they found zero evidence of the paranormal on our property. The next night, the rapping on the walls returned, and the tapping on my window as well. I had started to become an insomniac, and I wasn't doing well at school anymore. I was starting to feel sick every day. Finally, my father decided he and Mom would switch bedrooms with me, and he would deal with whatever was causing this problem on his own. Mom hated this idea, so Dad actually put her up in a hotel for a week. He figured he'd get it all figured out in that amount of time or less. Dad is a very hands-on kind of guy. He's handy with a wrench, and he can fix plumbing, electricity, and computers by using his toolkit and some YouTube videos. So I don't think it was the first night, but the second or third night when I woke up to the sound of my father screaming like someone had stepped on his foot really hard. It was the strangest shout I'd ever heard from anyone, and I bolted out of bed in a second. I knew I should run into the room and see what had happened, but at first, my feet wouldn't move. My father is a lot braver than I am, and if whatever was in there made him shout like that, it might make me drop dead of fright. Then my father screamed again, more like a threatening growl this time than a frightened cry. Instincts and adrenaline carried me into my old bedroom, and I saw my father standing next to my bed, facing the window, holding a chair over his head as though he were going to throw it straight through the glass. When I looked out of that window, what I saw was not a ghost or an apparition at all. It was some kind of an animal. A dark, hairy beast with broad shoulders, lumbering away from the window and back toward the forest where I assumed it had come from. I ran around my father and flung open the window, thrusting my head outside. I needed to see it with my own 2 eyes. It was going to be completely gone in a half second, and I didn't want to miss my chance to see what had been tormenting me for so long. The sound of me opening the window caused the creature to stop in its tracks and stand perfectly still. I gasped audibly as I realized I probably shouldn't have stuck my head out this window on that night. I probably should have stayed in bed and pretended to be asleep. As though smelling my fear and self-doubt, the creature turned around fully in one swift moment, then stood up to its tallest height. This thing was immense. It looked like a wolf that stood like a man in one sense, but it looked like a furry dinosaur in another. I mean, if you could picture an 8 or 9 foot tall tyrannosaur with longer arms and huger front claws, then shrink the head just a little and put wolf ears on top, you'd get the basic outline of this figure I saw. It looked like it could run 25 or 30 miles an hour on its hind legs, and probably go faster if it decided to drop to all fours. In that sense, it was even deadlier than a living tyrannosaur might be. The creature looked me right in the eyes, made a kind of loud inhaling noise, then charged toward my window so fast that it was almost like he was willing himself in front of me. I barely got the window shut before he was there, steaming up the glass as I ran back to my bedroom. I heard Dad screaming at it, but I didn't go back in that room. I don't think I've ever gone back in that room. The Dogman isn't interested in any of the other windows in the house, only that one for some reason. My sister is the one who solved the mystery of the wrapping on the house walls. One evening, she was driving home from shopping, and she literally saw one of these dogmen race out of the forest, slap the outer wall of the house very hard, then race straight off into another patch of woods. She imagined there must have been another one on the other side since they always did the wrapping in pairs. She said this was not a large monster like what my father and I had seen. This looked like a dark wolf. It ran on all fours, stood up, slapped at the house, then ran on its hind legs back to the forest. So all along it had been some kind of game of dare for the younger dogmen. How many creatures live in that area? It seems like a complete infestation to me. It's definitely not just 1 or 2. For all we know, there might be an entire community of them living over there. Like I said before, I'm away at college now and hope to find work and someplace to live when school is done so that I never again have to spend even one more night at my family's house. I wish they would just sell, but all 3 of them insist that the Dogman is the only thing they don't like about the house. He's not as frightening to them, or so they claim. I don't know. To me, that's just crazy. My father looked into the eyes of that thing the same as I did. He knows it's not a figment of the imagination. It's not a ghost. And it's not from another dimension. It's also not intelligent. It's just savage, and it looks hungry and mean. It's like some kind of hairy land shark. There's nothing good I can say about it, but the thing is definitely not supernatural or paranormal. It's just a kind of predator that's so skilled at avoiding humanity and hiding its own presence that it hasn't been formally identified by science yet. At least that's my personal opinion. I think my parents should sell that home, and I think they should sell it to some zoologists who can study these creatures and finally explain to me and to the rest of the world what exactly a dogman actually is.
Bigfoot Attacked My Tiny House. Scary Stories by Peter Bernard, Volume 1. Now available on Amazon in paperback.
Come back for more scary stories.